Typical Christian sort of teaching is that the enemy has these weapons, and his greatest one is discouragement. I suppose because discouragement is the reverse to hope, isn't it? It erodes hope. And if we can get rid of your hope, then we've got you, that sort of approach. Well, there's also a very subtle weapon that the enemy uses, and that is to simply crowd out. And in that regard, I think that sport, pornography, games, TV, gosh, there's loads of them, are all designed to crowd out your awareness and sovereignty of initiating something godly. TV is a classic example, isn't it? It's one way. You only receive. You can't influence the TV. I mean, you can turn it off. That's a good major way of influencing it. But, apart from that, the others I won't deal with. You can deal with those yourself. I mean, But do you see ways of crowding out your ability to have a consciousness of God? In other words, go to the root of the matter. The enemy is there to starve away the goodness that God has given, the time and the resources and the wherewithal to come to life eternal, to be devoted to Him and love Him. And sadly speaking, even marriage can do that. If you don't put God first, that's what's happened. You've crowded God out. I suppose the classical Christian would say, you put God in second place. But we know what they mean, don't we? That what do you expect if you're not really putting God first? I mean, it's the first commandment. The first principle of life eternal is to be using life, transitory life, here in the universe of the transitory and uncertainty, to be using this resource wisely for that which you truly value, of inestimable, is that the word? Worth, eternal value to you and to those around you. Well, let me pause a sec. The Pilgrim's Progress hymn, one of the verses, there's no discouragement would make him once relent his first avowed intent to be a pilgrim. That's right. And it's Old English, isn't it? Because John Bunyan was a long time ago. And he wrote Pilgrim's Progress, which was the second most read book in the world at one point. The first being the Bible, of course. Well, I haven't got an equivalent verse for crowding out. But it's, well, I suppose it goes hand in hand with discouragement, doesn't it? Crowding out and discouragement. Here's a good set of weapons. Well, all this colourful talk aside, what you going to do about it? You're going to resist both discouragement and crowding out like the plague. Poisoned honey. I was reminded of that with pornography. Let me just attempt to say something of that for a moment. something that seems lovely, but is poison honey. Not in the extravagant depravity sense that medieval Christianity seemed to weave, but in the simple sense that something that seems lovely can take all of a person's time, energy and resources, and life is frittered away with tragic consequence, not to mention disappointment, unhappiness. I think the Christian faith has added something to pornography, which is to make it an incredible guilt trip on so many people, especially young people. You know, your teenage and 20-year-olds. Don't think that that guilt trip is valid. I think it's an addiction that springs from a need that's not met for so many people. And that's the real tragedy. We have a society that leaves so many people out so much of the time. But I suspect that it's like the other addictions. Small amount is not damaging. It may even be a great relief and rescue. Some people are terribly shy. A small bit of alcohol at social meetings perhaps helps them immensely. Obviously there's a measure that's too much or dangerous. We're not doubting that. It's argued, isn't it, that drugs generally are similar. Obviously, even the medical profession, I say even, they use drugs to help. It does risk addiction, and there's then the problem of dealing with addiction sometimes. But in some sense, the argument seems valid. With these possible potential addictions, the addiction stage is when you move to a point where it's no longer bringing relief and rescue, but imprisonment and immiseration. I think that's a good word, immiseration. That it's tragically drawing from your life instead of helping and being a blessing. That's what you have to guard against. That's what you need to be armed against. It's not some great guilt thing that you're a drug addict or you're, you get angry easily or you're critical. It's that in some sense you've gone beyond. It's when you go beyond those helpful limits. The occasional anger, I'm not certain, but, could be of value, couldn't it? You might need a certain amount of anger to protect your family, and you should protect your family. Do you see what I mean? Protect children and so forth. I'm not quite sure whether I should call it anger, but you're going to need to be fired up anyway sometimes to call upon your resources to act. If you didn't get the point, we could include marriage in this, couldn't we? I spent 70 odd years, demonstrating that you can feel you're Christian, but be putting the wife before God. That, you spend more time and resources and attention on putting the wife first in reality. You can't keep a marriage that way. I'm living proof of it. No, I'm living example of it, sorry. We won't go into all those details. Yes. So be careful. Don't crowd God out. Major, major, major weapon of the enemy. Yes. Okay. May the Lord bless you. Thank you, Dad. Forgot the obvious one. Work, career. Wow, that can really crowd out, even if your work and career is the ministry. Especially if your work and career is the ministry. It crowds God out. You actually don't put him first. You put all this bureaucracy and management and organisational stuff that's got to be done. Crowds out. Or your career, or earning money because you've got to pay for so-and-so, and so forth and so forth. So, in fact, the scope and the opportunity to get you as regards crowding out is legion, isn't it? Which is what you would expect, of course. I say, if you ever want a really good read, it's C.S. Lewis, Screw Tape Letters. If you want to understand the enemy, that is so enlightening. I don't know how he wrote it. Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Bless you. Thank you, Dad. So, stepping back from this sort of discussion in some sense, we're not here to mortify the flesh. We're not here for that. We're here to love God and all that is good, and to trust him utterly, to trust in his goodness, not some achievement that we must make. We're here to trust in him, not ourselves. The trust in him and the love of him changes our needs. But if you have needs, other than those that perhaps you feel you shouldn't have, and you deny them and flatly ignore them, you will twist up your being, and even your love of God will be warped and strange and stressed. And we see this so much in religion. I mean, of course, among so many religious people, of every religion. You have to recognize the needs you have, and to some extent they must be met. And you do it in the most harmonious way that's available to you. You know, in the case of Paul's understanding of marriage, well, he doesn't want it himself. He's got a greater drive in him. But if you burn, well, you'd better get married. You know, if you have this burning need, well, then you'd better get married, hadn't you? Do you see, it's why you're in this world, so that you can meet the overwhelming desires and drives that you have. And okay, you learn by the consequence, and perhaps after the experience of, to some extent, meeting these needs, you're not so sure as they're that important after all. And you long for something, if you like, higher, the goodness of God. See, we need to be kind. When my child wants an ice cream, I don't respond with no. I delay a little, because the ice cream's not terribly good for him. If he presses me, well, okay. Yes, okay, love, well, look, how about just before we go home, not just now, okay, because I want to do so and so, but have an ice cream later on. And then, he says to you later, what about my ice cream, Dad? Oh, yes, okay, love, let's go and get an ice cream, shall we? I might drag my feet in meeting a need, but not too much. I don't want him to feel he can't enjoy the day because what he really wants is not happening. So we're kind to our children. Be kind to yourself likewise. Kind. Not reckless, of course. That would be awful, because you're concerned for your true welfare, but kind to your needs. Jesus said, how can they fast when the bridegroom's with them? Don't be stupid. There are times when you need to eat, to celebrate. Why are you denying the body? You have needs. Meet those needs modestly, of course, not to excess, where it becomes a curse. That's what addiction is. But if you're already trapped in addiction, and almost everyone is, religious or not, almost. Now they eat too much, or they argue too much, or they, well, there's 1,000 things. Who wants to list all the things that you can be wrong, but if you're caught in an addiction, you meet it to the extent that you are pressed to. But you have a longing in the back of your mind that you'd rather be free of this. So you start to lean against it. I don't mean cut it out ruthlessly. We might say, well, what about the scripture, if thine eye offend thee, pluck it out? Well, he certainly didn't mean it literally, did he? I mean, do you really, what's the point in plucking out one eye? You'd need to pluck out both, and really it's the thoughts, we know that. It's the mind, isn't it? But you might go through with an addiction, devising things that take your mind off it, so that you don't keep wandering back to it. Don't deliberately court friends that love drinking, alcohol, if you're suffering from an alcohol problem. Don't carry cigarettes on you if you don't really want to, in the long term, smoke. And when there's a strong need, well, you go and have a cigarette, go and buy one, or borrow one off a friend, if you're still keeping friends with people that smoke. But do you see you can do things that subtly affect your environment, that delay, not deny, but delay, and I was going to say minimize, but even that's a bit stressful. Reduce the problem. You get angry easy, you're addicted to anger. Okay, what are the things I get angry about that I could simply not be angry about? Let's take the obvious one. People cut me up on the road, say, cuts in front of me. I want to overtake him and block him. I don't need to. So he's done the wrong thing. Why should I do the wrong thing? I think I can cope with this particular anger situation. Well, in fact, I look forward to the next time when someone cuts in on me and I just do nothing about it. I even choose to think he may be having a stressful time, and of course it's not personal, is it? It doesn't know me from Adam. I don't have to react. I may be an angry person, but I don't have to be angry on these things. And you will extend your Pacific, your peace. You will extend it with practice, without stress. In other words, you will enjoy overcoming any addiction that you recognize you have. You will do it, that overcoming I mean, to the extent that you are happily able. So, supposing you're unhappy about eating meat because it kills creatures. Well, I'm not sure as I can just make this massive leap, you say to yourself. There's no need. How about just giving up pork? That's an easy one because it's not good for you anyway. You'll eat more chicken and that. Well, okay, well that might be a lot better for you. It's a step in the right direction, isn't it? How about doing that? You've done that for a while and you're used to being happy about doing that. You might extend it to, I don't know, steak. You're not going to eat raw blood. Perhaps that's not such a good idea. I can carry on eating meat, but not semi-raw steak or something. Do you see? Or not veal, because that's unkind, tragically unkind, perhaps. You might want to be vegetarian, but, well, how about just giving up meat? Not meat and fish. Why make life impossible? Don't beat yourself about. I mean, unless you find it easy to do so, in which case, well, wonderful, great. But if you don't, it's wonderful just to move in the right direction. You get there eventually, with minimal stress. You're still a happy, beautiful, lovely person. Still loving people, not all bitter and twisted because you've denied yourself the meeting of some obsession or some addiction that you've got. So that you're walking around like a wild, angry, unloving spirit. That's not a blessing. God is very kind, very gracious. He's put up with our faults, if you like, for many years. You can trust him to continue his grace. How much more if now you are trying to just move in the right direction. And you'll move as much as you find a joy to be, not a terrible pressure and stress. I've said too much. I should finish this. I'm sure you've got the message. As sure as you can be in a world of uncertainty. Bless you. Thank you, Dan.